So there was this steam bun vendor in some northern border town who started yelling at this guy Lin Fei, calling him a dirty beggar and telling him to get lost before he messed up the stall. Lin Fei tried explaining he had money and would pay for the buns, but the vendor wasn't having it and just kept telling him to screw off because he didn't want his dirty money. Lin Fei walked away muttering about what an idiot the guy was for turning down cash, saying the vendor would be stuck selling steam buns forever. Then he disappeared into the city alleys pretty quick. Two beggars who'd been watching the whole thing from against a wall looked at each other, got up without saying anything, and started following Lin Fei through the streets. They ended up in this dark alley together, and the shorter one was complaining about how they'd been chasing this kid forever without catching him, and maybe they should just give up. The taller beggar wasn't trying to hear that, though, reminding his buddy how long it had been since they'd eaten a real meal and pointing out that Lin Fei had money on. The tall beggar took off ahead, and the other one sighed, but followed anyway, because what else was he going to do? They chased for a bit, and when they turned a corner, the tall one suddenly stopped, and everything went dead quiet. The shorter beggar was confused, asking why they stopped, but before he could finish talking, the tall one just collapsed with his throat cut open and blood pouring everywhere. Lin Fei stepped over the body, walking toward the other guy, who immediately dropped to his knees begging and saying it was all the tall one's idea, and he'd keep quiet about everything, but Lin Fei just stabbed him in the neck mid-sentence, and the guy died right there. Lin Fei looked down at both bodies and said something about them talking too much, then wrapped them up in this nasty old sack and carried them toward the city wall. All that was left in the alley was 2 puddles of blood, and nobody gave a shit about 2 dead beggars during those rough times. And when he got to the wall, Lin Fei went straight to this hole he obviously knew about, squeezed through with his sack, and got outside the city while the guards up top were drinking and chatting, completely clueless about what just happened. Lin Fei wasn't much of a fighter, but the dude was strong, so carrying the sack wasn't a problem for him. He headed to the mass grave outside town and went to a spot he'd marked before, dug up the top layer of dirt, and there were already dozens of bodies and skeletons piled in there. He counted himself, saying something like 10 bodies, pulled the taller corpse out of his sack and tossed it in the pit, then covered everything back up. He kept the other body in the sack and walked over to this abandoned temple nearby. The temple wasn't far, so he got there pretty fast, but before going in, he took his knife and stabbed himself in the arm a couple times on purpose, seemed relieved when he saw the blood, then dragged the sack through the temple entrance. This creepy voice came from inside, asking if he brought the stuff, and saying, "Not bad, kid." The voice was coming from next to the Buddha statue where this old beggar was sitting, and the guy looked absolutely ducked up with torn clothes that smelled like death, bugs flying around him, and even crawling into his eye socket. His arms and legs were bent at these horrible angles like they'd been broken, and he had this huge hole in his stomach where anyone could see right inside to the flesh and blood. Lin Fei looked at this disgusting old beggar who barely looked human anymore and put on this fake smile, calling him master and saying he'd completed the mission successfully. When the old beggar heard Lin Fei call him master, he made this little cold sound under his breath, then slowly nodded his head. So the old beggar looked at the bodies and told Lin Fei he did a good job. The guy was actually impressed that someone like Lin Fei managed to kill that many people, saying he had real talent for the whole demonic cultivation thing. Then the old beggar's nose twitched, and he spotted the cut on Lin Fei's hand. His eyes got all greedy looking at the blood. He asked if Lin Fei was hurt and reminded him to bring more blood and bodies tomorrow. Lin Fei bowed and said he'd handle it. Lin Fei mentioned that tomorrow would be the 11th offering, and the old beggar promised to teach him the immortality technique. The beggar said he wasn't the type to go back on his word and would pass on the technique once he got his meal. Lin Fei got excited, tossed a corpse from his bag near the old guy, and said he'd leave him to eat. As Lin Fei walked away, the old beggar just stared at his back with hungry eyes. Lin Fei stopped outside the temple and looked back at it. He'd been a regular person who ended up hiding in that temple during all the chaos. That's where he met this weird old beggar who claimed he could teach him demonic immortality. The beggar had a massive hole in his stomach and messed up limbs, so Lin Fei figured he must have been some powerful demon cultivator back in the day. Lin Fei agreed to learn from him, but he knew demon cultivators were ruthless bastards who wouldn't just hand over their secrets. He had to hide what he could really do and get ready for whatever was coming. Lin Fei thought about how tomorrow would decide if he'd learn the demonic arts or just become the old man's next meal. He remembered watching the beggar suck blood and eat flesh, which was pretty horrifying. The way the old guy looked at him made Lin Fei think he might try to steal his body with some possession technique. He needed to get a purification talisman just in case, but those things cost money he didn't have. Time was running out since tomorrow was the day. Then it hit him. There was this one pervert who definitely had a talisman. Over at Chunfeng Tower in the north part of the city, Li Guang sat in the corner looking bored while dancers performed. Unlike the other guys who were drooling over the women, Li Guang seemed totally checked out. The madam came over and told him they didn't have what he wanted. Li Guang got pissed and slammed the table, asking how she couldn't find what he asked for days ago. He couldn't believe that in a city full of men, she couldn't find him a single one. The noise made people look over, but when they saw it was Li Guang, they turned away quickly. Some guys nearby whispered about how Li Guang was there looking for men again, saying all his servants at home were male. They wondered what he even did with them, but kept their voices down since the Li family had serious power. So everyone in the northern city knew Li Guang was in a guise, but nobody really talked about it openly since his family basically ran that part of town. The guests at Chunfeng Tower would whisper about it here and there, then shut up pretty quick. The madam stood there looking totally helpless because she couldn't give Li Guang what he wanted. She was thinking if she had the right equipment, she'd probably just handle it herself at this point. She put on this fake smile and told him to give her more time, promised she'd find him the perfect guy and send him over all cleaned up and ready. She was nervous as hell though, since the Li family owned part of the brothel anyway. Li Guang seemed a bit happier hearing that. He waved her off, stood up, and looked around the place for a decent-looking guy. When he couldn't find anyone worth his time, he just shook his head and walked out. Outside, Lin Fei was lying in some alley nearby, eyes closed like he was napping. He ditched his usual beggar rags for his only clean outfit and even bathed in the river outside the city earlier. The whole plan was to seduce Li Guang since the guy was gay anyway. Lin Fei cracked his eyes open just enough to see Li Guang leaving the brothel. He quickly rolled over and positioned his clean face toward the entrance, pretty confident he looked good enough to pull this off. But Li Guang never came over. Lin Fei opened his eyes fully and caught Li Guang walking away, muttering something about how he looked okay from far away, but was pretty average up close, and how he could do better than some beggar. Lin Fei's mood went dark hearing that. Once Li Guang was gone, he got up and checked his reflection in a puddle, thinking he looked perfectly fine and that Li Guang had no taste. Part of him felt disappointed his looks didn't work, but another part felt relieved. He wasn't totally sure how strong a first-tier talisman master was compared to regular cultivators, and with his mediocre skills, there was a real chance he'd lose a fight and end up in a bad situation. He stopped himself from spiraling and refocused. He needed that cleansing talisman no matter what, which meant dealing with Li Guang one way or another. So he turned around and followed the direction Li Guang had gone. Li Guang was just walking down the street casually. The whole conflict between the righteous and demonic cultivators had screwed over a lot of regular people in the northern city. Some had lost everything and ended up as beggars, sleeping in alleyways at night. Li Guang kept scanning their faces, looking for someone he liked. Then he stopped suddenly, staring at some beggar sleeping at an alley entrance. The guy wasn't drop-dead gorgeous, but had this masculine vibe going on, strong features, decent build, and looked clean, so he probably hadn't been in the North City long. Li Guang seemed pleased, then his eyes drifted down to check out the guy's crotch. Seeing a promising bulge there made him even happier. He walked over and tapped the beggar's shoulder. The guy's eyes shot open, looking terrified as he backed away, asking what Li Guang wanted. Li Guang laughed a bit while looking him over, and said he seemed pretty strong, introduced himself as the Li family's young master, and offered him a job as his personal bodyguard with room, board, and 2 taels of silver a month. The beggar's eyes lit up immediately. He agreed right away, thanking Li Guang and promising to protect him well, clearly impressed by the expensive clothes and not thinking twice about accepting. The beggar figured this was just how things worked in the North City. Life was cheap, and some rich kid probably just needed muscle for protection. It made sense, really, since the guy had picked up some fighting skills back in the day, and now it was finally paying off. So when the young master suggested checking him over for any health issues before hiring him, the beggar didn't think twice about it. The kid flashed this innocent smile while his eyes drifted downward, And next thing the beggar knew, they were heading towards some sketchy alley for this so-called inspection. Lin Fei had been tailing them this whole time, watching the scene unfold with growing confusion. Turns out he'd read the situation completely wrong. This Li Guang kid was definitely the one taking it, not giving it. Lin Fei glanced down at himself and muttered something about the guy not recognizing quality when he saw it. Deep in that alley, things got weird fast. Li Guang kept pushing, asking if the beggar wanted the job or planned to stay broke forever. The beggar, clearly uncomfortable but going along with it anyway, admitted he'd never done anything like this before. Lin Fei crept closer through the shadows, watching as Li Guang gave instructions, even telling the beggar to call him madam from now on. The beggar just shut his eyes tight and pretended he was with a woman instead, trying to get through whatever this was. Li Guang seemed pretty satisfied with how things were going. Lin Fei waited in the darkness, gripping his dagger, watching these two go at it. Once the beggar really got into it, Lin Fei saw his opening. He slipped up behind the guy and slashed his throat in one quick motion, dropping him instantly. Li Guang immediately knew something was off. Things had stopped way too soon, and when he opened his eyes, there was the beggar bleeding out on top of him. He shoved the body off just as Lin Fei's blade came for his throat. The kid rolled away fast, way faster than Lin Fei expected for someone at his level. Lin Fei chased him down, grabbed a handful of sand from his pocket, and flung it at Li Guang's face. While the kid was blinded, Lin Fei went for the head, but Li Guang turned just enough that the dagger only caught his ear, tearing it clean off. Li Guang scrambled up and reached for his storage bag, clearly going for some kind of talisman. Lin Fei knew those things were dangerous as hell, so he lunged forward, aiming for the kid's hand. Li Guang pulled back, but that's exactly what Lin Fei wanted. He switched direction mid-strike and drove the dagger straight into Li Guang's throat instead. The kid's eyes went wide as blood poured out, and he hit the ground. Lin Fei didn't take any chances, though, stabbing him a few more times just to be sure. Then he pulled out this old family cloth bag, stuffed both bodies inside, checked that the coast was clear, and got the hell out of there. He squeezed back through the hole in the city wall and didn't stop running until he reached the mass graves outside town. Finally feeling safe enough to breathe, Lin Fei dumped out the bag to see what he'd scored. The beggar was a total bust, just some nasty rags that smelled like ass. Li Guang was loaded. His clothes alone could have fetched serious silver, but the real prize was his storage bag. Lin Fei dumped everything out and went through it all. 1,000 taels of silver, 10 spirit stones, 5 talismans, some book called Complete Guide to Talismans, and some weird-looking underwear. Lin Fei just shook his head at the haul because most families lived off maybe a dozen taels a year, and this guy was walking around with 1,000. The spirit stones were even better since they were basically the real money in the cultivation world. But Lin Fei wasn't there for the cash, so he grabbed the talismans and started flipping through the book. 3 cleansing talismans and 1 fireball talisman were easy to identify, but the 5th one had him stumped. He went through the first tier section, then the second tier, and finally found it in the 3rd tier talismans, a lightning strike talisman. The thing could hit as hard as a peak chi refining cultivator going all out, which was probably something the Leaf family gave their boy as an emergency backup. Even a North City Lord, who was an early foundation establishment, would have a rough time taking a hit like that. Lin Fei felt a lot better holding on to it. Right then, a white light shot up from where that old temple was. Lin Fei's expression changed, and he quickly shoved everything into the storage bag, buried the body, and headed toward the temple. Inside, some guy named Wang Long stood there in white robes with a silver spear, staring down the old beggar. Wang Long couldn't believe his luck. He'd stumbled onto the devouring demon himself in this dump of a temple. The guy was practically celebrating already, thinking about how killing this demon would get him major points back at the Snow Soul sect, maybe even land him an Elder's Disciple spot. The devouring demon just snorted at him, calling Wang Long a 7th-stage chi refining brat, and telling him to come test his skills if he had the guts. Wang Long laughed it off, saying he'd already sent up a signal and his sect brothers would be there soon enough. So he just backed up even more to keep his distance. The devouring demon's face went dark as demonic energy started building up inside him. He knew he had to kill Wang Long before backup arrived, or he'd actually die in this shitty temple. Then the devouring demon sensed something and glanced toward the entrance. Wang Long noticed too. Someone else was coming. Lin Fei had been sneaking up to the temple when something fell off, so he stopped and moved to the side. The devouring demon let out a cold laugh and shouted for Lin Fei to get in there and kill the righteous cultivator, calling him his good disciple. Right after that, the old demon stopped talking and his blood energy surged as he tried to use the distraction to escape underground. Lin Fei cursed under his breath, calling the old bastard cruel for throwing him under the bus like that. The devouring demon was clearly trying to use the kid as a human shield to buy himself some breathing room. Wang Long suddenly showed up out of nowhere, pointing his spear right at Lin Fei's throat and let out this low, mocking laugh. Oh, so the devouring demon's got a little disciple now. The second Lin Fei saw that spear, he dropped to his knees and started bowing like his life depended on it, which honestly it probably did. That's just how things worked when someone was weak. Kowtow a few times, stay alive, maybe get revenge later. No shame in it. My lord, please. Lin Fei kept saying while his head hit the ground over and over. That guy's talking complete nonsense. I don't even know him. I just heard some weird sounds and came to check it out. That's literally it. Wang Long looked down at him and let out this cold laugh. Right. So if he doesn't know who the hell you are, how'd he just call out your name? Sweat started pouring down Lin Fei's face as he scrambled for an answer. He was making it up. My name's Li Guangguang. I've got nothing to do with whoever this Lin Fei person is. Wang Long seemed to buy it, or at least half buy it. The kid only had this sour smell coming off him. His cultivation level was pretty mediocre, and there wasn't any demonic energy around him, so Wang Long figured he was probably fine. All right, kid, just stand there and don't move. I'll deal with you in a minute, Wang Long said before turning his attention back to the real problem. Better to catch the big fish first. The little nobody could wait. Wang Long gripped his spear and faced the devouring demon, who was already gathering blood energy around himself like he was planning to bolt. Still trying to run? You're already mine. Not wanting to risk the demon actually escaping, Wang Long launched his attack, the silver spear shooting straight for the demon's throat. The devouring demon's expression darkened as blood energy exploded from his body, shifting from red to black until demonic energy wrapped around him completely. His huge frame actually got thinner under all that black mist, and then this withered black claw shot out and caught Wang Long's spear mid-strike. The impact forced Wang Long back a step, and that black energy started crawling up the spear like it was alive, heading straight for his body. Wang Long dropped the weapon, fast, and pulled another spear from his storage bag without missing a beat. So the devouring demon's really desperate now, Wang Long said with a sneer. Converting blood energy into demonic power like that. Trying to take me down with him, or something? He started channeling his spiritual energy, planning to keep his distance, and wear the demon down slowly. The devouring demon just snorted and suddenly rushed forward, claws slashing toward Wang Long, burning through blood energy like this couldn't last long. So the demon needed to end things quickly. Wang Long barely managed to block with his spear held horizontal across his chest. Just when he thought he'd caught a break, the devouring demon's mouth opened and black gas came pouring out. The mist hit Wang Long square in the face, and his expression went gray before he collapsed to the ground dead. Guy didn't even have protective treasures on him, and he wanted to act tough. The devouring demon muttered with a cold laugh. He bent down, grabbed Wang Long's neck with both hands, and lifted the body up. But right as the demon opened his mouth to absorb the blood, all that overwhelming demonic energy suddenly crashed, and his arms just dropped limply to his sides. Damn it, the demon muttered, staring at Wang Long's corpse. Can't do a direct absorption like this. After burning through his powers like that, the devouring demon was completely drained, and his demonic energy was barely there. He could still absorb Wang Long's blood energy directly, but converting the spiritual power for his own use wasn't happening anymore. The problem was Wang Long's buddies from the Snow Soul sect would be showing up any minute now. If the demon tried to run in this condition without absorbing any spiritual energy, he'd just end up as someone else's trophy. While the devouring demon stood there trying to figure out his next move, he noticed Lin Fei still standing at the entrance of the rundown temple. The devouring demon suddenly got this wild idea. If Lin Fei learned his technique and drained all the blood and spiritual energy from Wang Long's corpse, The demon could just turn around and absorb Lin Fei instead, which would totally restore his own power. "Disciple, get in here," the devouring demon called out, collapsing dramatically on the ground like he was about to die any second. Lin Fei walked in, saw the whole act, and just frowned a bit while touching his storage bag. The demon grabbed his hands and started going on about how he'd promised to teach him this incredible demonic technique, how he barely survived the fight with that righteous cultivator, and how he needed someone to carry on his legacy before he died. Then he sent the technique directly into Lin Fei's mind through divine sense. Lin Fei almost grabbed a defensive talisman, but relaxed when he realized the technique transfer wasn't hostile. It was called the Devouring Gods and Slaying Technique, the demon's actual cultivation method. The demon kept talking about how demonic cultivation was all about determination and willpower, not talent, when suddenly this massive wave of demonic energy just erupted from Lin Fei's body. The demon freaked out internally because nobody had ever learned it that fast, and the energy coming off the kid was actually pretty strong. Whatever had happened to Lin Fei must have been intense. The demon coughed and pointed at Wang Long's corpse, telling Lin Fei to absorb it as his first gift. Lin Fei just dropped to his knees and started crying, calling him master and saying he couldn't take it, that the demon should use it to recover instead. The demon panicked and kept insisting Lin Fei take it, but the kid just knelt there refusing to move. Running out of time, the demon finally admitted his body was too damaged to absorb the spiritual power anyway, so Lin Fei should just go ahead and use it. Lin Fei slowly stood up and stared right into the demon's eyes. Then he smiled, reached into his storage bag, and threw out a talisman. Lightning crashed through the temple roof and slammed into the devouring demon. The lightning strike talisman hit with the force of a peak chi refining cultivator's full attack. When everything settled, the demon was dead, just a charred corpse on the ground. Lin Fei stared at the body and started laughing like crazy, shouting about how heaven hadn't abandoned him after all. He'd been handed this perfect opportunity, and obviously he was going to take it. Some random chi refining cultivator wasn't good enough to be his first stepping stone to power, but the infamous devouring demon, that was barely worthy enough. So Lin Fei just finished laughing his ass off and got straight to work. The devouring demon's body was lying there all burnt up, and Lin Fei dropped down next to it and started running his technique. This thick black energy started pouring out of him and wrapped around the demon's corpse. Lin Fei could feel this, power flowing back into him, filling up his demonic energy reserves. Some leftover soul fragments tried to slip into his mind, but his technique just crushed them instantly and merged everything into his consciousness. That's when it clicked for Lin Fei how insane this technique actually was. The thing basically used everything to make him stronger. It sucked up demonic energy, ate souls to boost his mind, and absorbed blood to toughen up his body. Nothing went to waste. The corpse in front of him was completely drained now, so Lin Fei walked over and pried open the demon's clenched fist. Inside was this egg-sized blood bead packed with crazy amounts of energy. The devouring demon must have been saving it as a backup plan. Probably would have used it to overpower Lin Fei and steal all his energy if things had gone differently. Demons who practiced the same techniques made the best fuel for each other. But now all that planning was worthless, and Lin Fei got the prize instead. After checking his loot, Lin Fei opened his mouth wide and just swallowed the whole demon corpse. Then he did the same thing with Wang Long's body, though the spiritual energy was annoying to deal with since he had to corrupt it with demonic energy first. Once both corpses were absorbed, the demonic energy inside Lin Fei started going nuts, like it was about to burst out of him. His body couldn't handle all that power surging around. Wang Long's people were probably on their way already, so there wasn't time to properly absorb the blood energy. Lin Fei just swallowed Wang Long's corpse whole and took off using this movement technique called blood stepping step, heading south toward the Mangbei forest. Lin Fei had never really used blood stepping step before, but all that wild demonic energy needed somewhere to go, so it just poured into the technique. Black mist carried him forward at insane speed, and he covered hundreds of miles in no time, reaching the forest. The demonic energy finally started settling down, so Lin Fei found some abandoned cave and sat down to meditate. After cycling his energy a few times, he opened his eyes and let out a long breath. Lin Fei realized he couldn't just absorb demonic energy without the blood energy anymore. The technique was so aggressive that he would have exploded if it wasn't so powerful. On the bright side, all that chaotic energy made his movement technique ridiculously fast, which is how he got to the forest so quickly. The Manga forest stretched for thousands of miles along the northern mountains and was loaded with rare treasures, so tons of cultivators came to train there. But the place was seriously dangerous. 4 demon kings ruled the forest with armies of lesser demons under them, strong enough that even the Snow Soul sect had to watch their step around them. Lin Fei didn't have time to worry about any of that, though. He sat down in the cave and started his technique again, breaking down the 2 corpses still sitting in his stomach. So Lin Fei's doing his cultivation thing, and all this blood and chi starts pumping out from his core, flowing through his whole body and making him stronger. Meanwhile, over in North City, at the Li family compound, the family head Li Guoqiang's asking his guys if they found anything. The guard in leather armor keeps his head down and tells him they've searched the whole northern part of the city but haven't found his son yet. Li Guoqiang's not happy about it. The guy's face goes hard, and he starts laying into them, calling them useless and asking what good they are to the family. His cultivation power flares up, and the guards can barely breathe from the pressure. Then Li Guofu, who runs the second branch of the family, stands up and tells his older brother to chill out. He makes this snide comment about how maybe the nephew ran off to hook up with some guy. Li Guofu's not scared of his brother, since they're both at the same cultivation level, and he's clearly taking shots at Li Guanglong for being gay. The thing is, Li Guang's pretty much useless by cultivation world standards. Can't read, weak cultivation, and only got his talisman master certification because his dad threw resources at it. Plus, people look down on him for being into guys. He only gets away with acting tough around North City because he's the family head's only son, but Li Guofu doesn't give him any respect. Li Guofu keeps going, saying the real priority is welcoming the elders from the Snow Soul sect. His son Li Feng's trying to get recruited, and nothing can mess that up. The guy's clearly proud of his kid, who's got 3 spiritual roots and already hit the 6th level of chi refining while still young. Way better than Li Guang. Li Guofu's thinking once his son gets into the sect and reaches foundation establishment, the family head position's going to change hands. Li Guoqiang forces a smile when he hears all this. He can't really do much against his brother, since they're equally strong, and it pisses him off knowing how much better Li Feng is than his own son. So Li Guoqiang plays it smooth, saying he definitely cares about his nephew joining the sect, but his own son's still his son, and these guards aren't cutting it. He asks if the second branch can spare some people to help search. Li Guofu thinks about it for a second, then agrees. Right then, this big dude in city guard uniform walks in and tells the Li brothers that the city lord of Beiqing wants them at the mansion to discuss something important. The brothers look at each other and stand up. Li Guoqiang asks what it's about, and the guard says 2 disciples from the Snow Soul sect showed up at the city lord's mansion, and they don't look happy. The Li brothers both frown. Not looking happy? Maybe something's going on besides just recruiting disciples. At the city lord's palace, someone announces the Li brothers have arrived. The city lord Du Bei tells them to come in right away. Li Guoqiang and Li Guofu walk into the main hall together, bow to Du Bei, then bow to the 2 Snow Soul sect disciples who are clearly in a bad mood. Du Bei nods and points to some empty seats for them to sit. Once they're settled, he gets straight to it, saying something major's happened. There's a powerful demonic cultivator outside North City. So this demonic cultivator had just taken down a disciple from the Snow Soul sect. The Li brothers, Guoqiang and Guofu, heard the news and got pretty surprised, though not totally shocked since demonic cultivators showing up near the border wasn't exactly rare. But killing a Snow Soul sect disciple right when they were in town recruiting, that was ballsy and stupid, because if the sect got pissed off, they'd probably cut the number of spots they were offering to kids from North City. Li Guofu jumped up all eager, promising they'd hunt down this demonic cultivator and hand him over to the sect. His older brother Guoqiang looked annoyed at how quickly his brother was volunteering them, but he backed him up anyway, then carefully asked what kind of power level they were dealing with. Wang Hu, one of the sect's disciples, stood up to explain. His brother Wang Long had been the one who got killed at that abandoned temple outside the city. Wang Long was at the 7th level of Qi refining and couldn't even hold out for half an hour against this guy before getting wrecked. By the time Wang Hu and the others showed up, the demonic cultivator had already bolted toward the Mongbei forest, moving crazy fast. The Li brothers went quiet, doing the math in their heads. If Wang Long couldn't last that long, this demonic cultivator was probably sitting around the 9th level of Qi refining, which meant he wasn't some pushover they could just roll up on. Then Wang Hu dropped the real bomb. The sect elders were pissed and wanted help tracking this guy down, and they were willing to sweeten the deal with 2 extra recruitment spots for North City. Even better, whoever brought back the demonic cultivator's head would get a guaranteed spot without even taking the entrance exam. That got everyone's attention real quick. City Lord Du Bei had a son who usually competed with Li Guofu's Kid Li Feng for spots every year, and now he could just skip all that drama. Li Guofu was thinking the same thing about avoiding the competition. Even Li Guoqiang, the family head, realized his son Li Guang could finally get into the sect, even if just as a servant disciple. Getting into a sect with a nascent soul-level expert running things was a huge deal. Du Bei and both Li brothers agreed immediately, and Wang Hu thanked them for stepping up. Meanwhile, out in a cave near the Mongbei forest, Lin Fei was sitting there covered in this bloody aura with red light flickering across his skin. After a while, he opened his eyes and stood up, finally done refining those 2 corpses he'd been working on. He stretched out, feeling all this new power flowing through. The demonic energy and physical strength he had now meant he could absolutely wreck someone like Li Guang, that first-tier talisman master, without breaking a sweat. Lin Fei had just gotten stronger, but had no clue where he actually stood power-wise. Right then, a pack of wolves with glowing green eyes caught the blood scent and showed up outside the cave. He recognized them immediately as demon-patterned wolves, the most basic monsters hanging around the outer edges of Mongbei Forest. These things usually hit around 4th level Qi refining strength when fully grown. 6 of them were staring him down. The guy swallowed hard. Sure, he just leveled up, but 6 wolves was still sketchy. He figured he'd better make the first move, so he used this blood step technique to rush the biggest wolf in the pack. There's this old saying about wolves having iron heads and copper tails, but soft middles, so that's where the kill shot needs to land. Lin Fei wrapped his fist in demonic energy and slammed it straight into the wolf's ribs. The bones cracked, the wolf went flying sideways, hit the ground howling, and died pretty quick. That actually surprised him, seeing what kind of damage he could pull off now. But the other 5 wolves weren't waiting around. They came at him from behind, claws out, jaws open. He used blood step again to get some distance, then picked them off one by one using the same movement technique. Once all the wolves were down, he finally caught his breath and started using the devouring god-slaying technique to absorb their demonic energy and blood. Demon-patterned wolves are demon race creatures, which means they're born with solid physical strength, but can't control spiritual energy like human cultivators can. Most demons practice demonic internal arts that rely on killing and devouring to get stronger. These particular wolves were pretty average, though, physically strong with not much demonic energy to work with. Refining them took way less time than refining the devouring demon or king dragon had. The technique converted everything useful from the wolves into his own power in no time. The whole thing made him appreciate again just how insanely powerful the devouring god-slaying technique was. Problem was, he didn't have any actual combat moves to go with it. The technique itself was an internal skill for absorbing energy and boosting strength, but without offensive abilities, all that power couldn't really be unleashed properly. Against the wolves, he'd basically just won by using blood-step footwork and his raw physical strength. No real combat skills or offensive techniques at all. It worked, but it was way more effort than it needed to be. He made a mental note that getting some actual offensive methods needed to happen soon. Then he remembered he still had the storage bags from Wang Long and the devouring demon. Wang Long's bag had some decent stuff in it. 300 low-grade spirit stones, several weapons that were well-made and sharp, but didn't have any spiritual properties, so they were just regular weapons, and 3 bottles of pills labeled Gathering Chi Powder, which was just standard cultivation aid stuff anyone could get. No offensive techniques, though, so he moved on to the devouring demon's bag. That one had 0 spirit stones, but a few dozen axe technique manuals. Made sense, since the devouring demon probably used an axe before becoming whatever he ended up as. Lin Fei figured axe techniques could actually work pretty well. They're big and powerful, need good physical conditioning, which lined up perfectly with demonic cultivators practicing the devouring god-slaying technique. He pocketed everything, circulated his demonic energy, and got ready to move. The blood smell from the fight was heavy and would definitely attract stronger monsters he didn't want to deal with. My best bet was getting out of Mongbei Forest as fast as possible.